Today we're going to learn how to solve quadratic equations. So one of the things we're going to get started is I'm going to use the starter, kind of make sense of it with the starter that we use, and at least with this graph over here, and then I'm going to try to explain it mathematically a little bit better of why we get two solutions, okay? So let's go ahead, let's do f of x is equal to, this dark line right here, this line that you see right here, this is my parent function. So what happened to go from my parent function to, it went to the right by 2, and then it went up to get at this dotted line right here. So when we write our equation, we're going to get x minus 2 squared, and then we're going to get plus 1 because it moved up. Alright, so what if I told you to find f of x is equal to 5? So oops, sorry, that's my phone. So one thing to do is, let's look at this graph. So when my y value is right here, when it's equal to 5, is going to be right up here in this area right there on this line. When x is 5, it's right here. So I can already look at this point right there. When it's 5, what's my x value? My x value is 0. And then over here we have another point. When this is my y value is 5, my x value is 4. So we have these two solutions. Alright, but let's go and solve this using our equation. So this is my y value, and I'm trying to find my x values. We're going to put it into here. So we're going to get 5 is equal to x minus 2 squared plus 1. Okay, I'm going to scroll this down a bit. What do we do to get rid of the adding or subtracting? We always do that first. Well, we subtract one of both sides, and we're going to get 4 is equal to x minus 2 squared. Alright. So let's scroll this down a bit. So make sure to take notes, all right? I'm going to try to help us explain and understand this mathematically, all right? So first, if I give you an equation like this, let's say x squared is equal to 4. What are the two possible answers that we can put in here that is going to give us a positive 4? Well, 2 squared, right? What's 2 squared? 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. And also, what's the other one? Negative 2. What's negative 2 times negative 2? Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 2 times 2 is 4, so 4. Alright, so that's why these are our two solutions. Alright, so what do we do to get rid of the square over here? Well, we take the square root of both sides. Alright, there we go. So we go down here. Alright, now look at what we just talked about over here. So we know, for example, that the square root of 4 is equal to 2. The square root of 4 is equal to 2 because 2 times 2, or 2 squared, is equal to 4. That's essentially what the square root value is. And then if you notice, the square root of 4 is also going to yield us negative 2, because negative 2 squared is equal to 4. This is when we're dealing with quadratics. It's almost essentially like when we take the square root of a number, we're going to get a plus square root of 4, and we're going to get this minus square root of 4, because it's going to give us both those answers. Well, the square root of 4 is 2, but we put the minus sign, so it's negative 2. Alright, so over here, this is why we break it up into two equations. This is going to cancel like I showed up here, and we're going to get the square. So if I think about it, it's almost like we have a positive and a minus when we take the square root. We're going to cover that a little bit later, but we're going to get the square root of 4 is 2, so we get 2 is equal to, and then we have here x minus 2. And then kind of like what we talked over here, we're going to get negative 2 is equal to x minus 2. And the reason, again, why we get this negative 2 and 2 is because 2 squared is 4, and negative 2 squared is 4. So that's why we have two possible answers, and the square root just tells us that information. So what do we do to get rid of the minus 2? Well, we add 2 to both sides. Okay, and we're going to get x is equal to 0, and we're going to get x is equal to 4. There we go. And if you look back up here on this graph, that's what we have on our graph. This equation is this dotted line right there. And if you notice, when x is 0, my y value is 5. And when x is 4, my y value is also 5. So it makes sense that we get 2 solutions, okay? One thing that you could always do is, let's write that back, the equation here. This was the equation we just had. X minus 2 squared. Okay, I got this equation right here from the one that we worked with, which is right over here. Oops. Which is right over here. It's this one right there, all right, before we took the square root of both sides. So let's plug in our x value. Let's take this and plug it into here. So we're going to get 2 minus 2. Oh, sorry. We're going to get 4. We take our 4 and plug it into x, so we're going to get 4 minus 2 squared. All right, what's 4 minus 2? Well, that's 2 squared, which is equal to 4, which is what we wanted right here. And that's exactly this expression. That's exactly this expression right here. All right, now let's go ahead and plug in 0. Well, what if we plug in 0 into this equation here? Well, we're going to get 0 minus 2 squared. Well, that's the same thing as negative 2 squared. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. So this also works. We can plug in back into our equation, it works. And if you notice, this is this portion right there. So I hope this makes sense of to why we're going to have, when we take the square root, whatever number this is, we're going to put a positive. So square root of 4 is 2. So we're going to do 2 is equal to x minus 2. And then we're going to do negative 2 is equal to x minus 2. Hopefully this helps you understand how to do these problems right here and why we get 2 solutions.